Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Story number 1. Survive, little ones. Survive. Written by Erebos Yeet. It was hard not to show his emotions while he was watching the city burn. There, standing on a hill that had been his home for many centuries, it towered over the other homes that he'd helped to build. Soon, there'd be nothing left but ash. Yet, not wanting to look a second longer, he smiled towards the small creatures hidden beneath his gigantic wings. They were his descendants, many generations removed, left in his care while their parents fought in the defense of their planet. The hatchlings looked up at him, full of dormant fear and curiosity. "Will we win, Gratka?" asked the biggest amongst them. He was old enough to doubt their invincibility. The younger kids still believed their parents would always win, as kids tend to do. "Of course, yes, little one. I've asked all of my many friends for help. They will be here any second," he lied. It had been so long since he had last spoken to his former allies. In his long life, he had many, but little creatures aged as gracefully as he had. They lived and died in what to him seemed only a short moment, like a falling star greeting him before quickly burning out, leaving him with nothing but darkness. So who would help? The dead cannot protect his flock from death. They can only welcome us to join the endless nothingness. He was crudely awakened out of his deep thought by a high-pitched howls of the Zlakta at the bottom of the hill. Their renowned sense of smell had brought them here, and while most passed the hill looking for meatier prey than the old reptile and a few hatchlings, 3 started scaling the rocks. He breathed deeply. He mustn't worry the hatchlings. Let them feel safe till the very end. The 6 claws of the monsters were able to climb quickly, and the old Vinay knew that he would not be able to stop them. His bones were old and rotting, his mind slow and filled with millions of useless memories. The beasts sprinted through the steep fields and were now mere wingspans away. He closed his wings around the hatchlings, then averted his eyes. He repeated the mantra he repeated so many times. "Survive, my little ones, survive, even if only a moment longer." His sentence ended with a thunderous applause of explosions through the sky. Through the air, 2 creatures flew towards Lacta, guns blazing, their wings, no, not their wings, suits, pushed them right to the front of the Vinay Elder. Their guns, which seemed antique, firing volley after volley against the first creature. He took many hits, but then he opened his mouth. The bullet flew right in and scattered his yellow insides against the rocks and grass. The second creature had gotten closer and leapt at the first biped, seemingly knowing that he was no match for the Zlakta. He took an explosive and waited for the beast to land. While it ripped out his windpipe, the biped triggered it, killing them both. Then the third creature arrived, just as fast as 2 others. The biped that was left threw aside his blaster and grabbed what had to be a sword. The metal reflected the yellow evening sun and painted the spark of hope in the burning landscape. He ran towards the last Zlakta and seemingly willingly let himself be massacred by his enormous claws. Holding the biped in front of him, with his 4 front grabbers, the creature stood up and howled in victory. This was the moment the biped waited for, and, with all of his remaining power, he thrust the blade into its soft underbelly. The monster roared, but was dead before he truly grasped what had happened. Only now, as the biped stood before him, shaking on his knees, could the Vinay clearly see him. He recognized the species. He remembered them very well. Long ago, a lifetime for me, 11 generations for them. Their planet had become unlivable due to the ferocious geological activity. Clouds of ash had destroyed their crops, and it was clear that humanity, as they called themselves, would not survive. They had sent all the distress signals they possibly could into open space, hoping that they weren't alone. I was the only one who heard the cries. Even in interstellar space, they were located in a very distant and isolated galaxy. Back then, I was a wealthy man. To save their species would mean the end of my wealth. It would cost too much. Nonetheless, the Benai are an honorable bunch. I called for every favor I could. I gave all my possessions away just to build the biggest ships this side of the galaxy had ever seen. But I was sure that it was possible to go and rescue them. I responded to their cry of help with a short transmission. Do not despair. I have heard your message, and I will come to your aid. I am far away, but do not doubt that I will come. Survive, little ones. Survive, even if only for a moment longer. It took a human generations for the ships to get to their planet. When I set off, I was informed that there was a modest amount of them, about 14 billion. By the time I arrived, only 300 million remained. I was able to save about 126 million of them, for the majority rather die on their planet than trust an alien creature. Once they arrived on the home planet, it became apparent my planet would not sustain them, so they became a scattered species all across the universe. They became warriors, traders, scientists, and laborers for different civilizations, never entirely united again. But before they left, their leader had come to me and proclaimed, "We are indebted to you, dear rescuer. When your cries light the night sky, we will unite once again and do what you did for us." Expected it a pleasantry. Humans died too fast. They would never remember me once time had come. But there one stood before me, on the edge of death. I spread my gigantic wings covered in scales and bowed my head. I remembered it as a sign of great respect amongst the humans. Then I spoke. "Thank you, dear human. You saved my life and the life of my hatchlings. Your bravery will be remembered, and the debt of your species has been repaid." The human fell on his knees. He was departing from this plane. I shielded the eyes of the hatchlings who tried to come closer. He looked up at me and said, "No, not yet," blood dripping out of his mouth as he raised his arms, as to convey a message. I could read, beneath the blood and dirt, black words that seemed permanently inked into his skin. It read, "Survive, little ones, survive." And as the human fell to the ground, hundreds, no, thousands of ships arrived in the evening sky. The sheer mass of their loyalty seemed to block out the sun. Out of every ship, hundreds upon hundreds of little dots dropped out of the surface, ready to fight, ready to die, destined to win. They had to come. They had remembered. The ships were a cacophony of different designs and sizes from all across the universe. The humans were united for the first time since the death of their planet. All for their promise. Perhaps all just for me. My scales started dancing with hope. The hatchlings cheered. The oldest one looked up at me, proud, and shouted, "I knew that you could do it, Gartka." The only answer I could muster was reassuring. "We'll survive, little ones. We will survive." End of story. Story number 2. We all bypassed fusion. The humans didn't. Written by Arctic YT 99. Energy is equal to mass multiplied by speed of causality squared. It is understood by the galactic community that fusion is a pipe dream. The chance of fusion depends on the chance of collision of atoms. The cross-section becomes very important. With atoms being so tiny, one needs to heat up the particles massively or increase the pressure substantially. As it turns out, it takes more energy to reach those thresholds than you would gain from the reaction. The closest we ever got to fusion energy was through the fission-boosted fusion detonation of thermokinetic chambers. Imagine detonating TNT in an upside-down bowl and converting the blast and heat directly into electricity. then you should have an understanding of how it worked. Most species took to antimatter reactions, finding it far easier to harvest antimatter produced by their local star, or creating antimatter in orbital antimatter factories. Some species stayed with good old fission technology. The humans didn't. They discovered spatial distortion technology and used it to travel interplanetary distance in a reasonable time, much like the rest of us. What they did with it, beyond travel, surprised us. Remember when I said that fusion is based on the cross-section area of an atom? Well, it turns out that you can distort space in such a way as to create a bubble whose dimensions are equal to that of one atom. You can even do so with the input of energy using specialized designs that take advantage of the Casimir effect. You need only put in enough energy to surpass the Coulomb barrier. It's insane. It's simple. It's been staring us right in the face the whole time. Sure, it doesn't have the energy output of antimatter, but you can collect large amounts of hydrogen anywhere that has water or even directly from a star. It allows us to explore far further into the unknown regions than we ever would before. The humans, they've started a galactic renaissance. End of story. I just quickly want to thank the Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Alithia Barkey, Cam Maxwell, Caspar Arnholtz, Albarden Guster, Arcadian, Lord Azrakal, and Joachim Backer.